Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. We're super excited to be joined by Scott, the founder and CEO of Mai, an early stage education tech platform who we had the privilege of working with. Thanks so much for joining us, Scott.
Thanks, Nina. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I think to kick it off, we would love if you could share some background about yourself and your story. I know this isn't your first rodeo as an entrepreneur, so if you could, share your story and also, how that then led you to founding Mai.
Great. Yeah. So, probably like many of your listeners, I'm a repeat entrepreneur. I've had a number of startups. My first was a dismal failure. My second was much better. We had a very good exit. My third was also pretty good. We had a very nice exit. Both of those, the good ones, were in the IT infrastructure space. We built security, messaging, collaboration platforms, and I sold my last company at the end of 2020, worked for the acquiring company for a year, and then started thinking about what was coming next. And I wasn't sure, as an entrepreneur, not having a problem to solve is itself a problem. So it took a little while. Many, many years ago, I had lived in Israel. I love the country, and I've always wanted to move back and moving to a place where my children are out of school. So I had the opportunity to start thinking about that, meeting really great people again, reconnecting with Israel. Among those people that I met Nina along the way, and we've become, I think, friends along the way. So it's also a pleasure to not just work with Nina, but also know her personally. The things of October 7th and what was happening in our education system, I started seeing the problems there, and I had seen those many times in my life before, when I was in school and then when my children were in school, and saw an opportunity to do something to improve the world. And my previous companies were successful. We had great outcomes. We treated all of our people well, our customers well. But the opportunity to do something with more impact, and do something with more impact in an industry that has been largely bypassed by technology. It's one of the last huge markets that is almost entirely untouched by technology. Education's a $1 trillion a year business in the United States, and technology is used very sparsely. It's really a kind of an online grading book and an email system for handing out and getting homework back. And so as a result of that and the problems that we see in the education system, we find that a lot of families are now exploring alternatives to traditional school. And so, there's private schools and then there's homeschooling. But homeschooling is also really difficult for parents to do. There's a high amount of burnout and turnover in that. About 60% of families stop homeschooling their children after the first year or two. And we saw an opportunity to apply AI to solve an immediate problem, and over time, hopefully do something to improve our education system.
Amazing. So I guess that leads us directly into what you're doing right
Yeah,
now. Can you
sure.
tell us a bit about Mai?
Yeah, so Mai is the name of our avatar. So she's an AI avatar-based learning companion for home and then micro school families and children. And what she does is, right now, our first version of our product is she builds enrichment lessons for students on demand. So if you don't know a lot about homeschooling, you can imagine a parent, a primary caregiver, doing a homeschool lesson. And at some point, when it's going really well, the child asks a great question that deviates from the curriculum. It's a great question. They want to explore it, but the parent doesn't have an answer. Say the child asks about black holes. You're doing a unit on science. Now, most parents probably don't have the ability to really answer deep questions about black holes. But we can generate a 20 or 30-minute lesson, bring in, an age-appropriate, parent preferences-appropriate video, and then hold a discussion with the parent and the child about black holes. And in our first version, you can have Mai lead the lesson, or we can have the parent lead the lesson. And when the parent leads the lesson, we give the parent all of the materials that they need in order to do that, including the discussion prompts, the video, and so on. And so that's the core of our first version. Along with that, Mai is also available to be a coach, a guide, a mentor for the parent. When the parent is having difficult times working and homeschooling, it doesn't always go great and they need help. It can also be a very lonely task doing homeschooling, being responsible for all the duties in the home and the education. So we try to do both, and through that we intend to learn a lot about the parent, the child, the family, in order to truly, for the first time ever, personalize education.
Amazing. So where are you guys at to date with what you're building?
So we just launched our first version in the App Store about a week and a half ago. We went public with it. We exhibited at the largest homeschooling convention in the United States in Orlando, Florida, just this past weekend, and had a very terrific reception.
Amazing. Amazing. It's super awesome to be able to see kind of how you guys have grown even over the last few months and how things have progressed.
It is really nice to see it come together. There's always, that first contact with your customers is always an exciting and scary time, and it went very well.
Well, especially because Mai is like quite literally almost a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
It's not just a tech, but the way you interact with Mai feels like a personal experience.
That's the goal. I mean, it's AI, of course, so there's always challenges, and we're going to have a lot of work to make it happen. But internally, we speak of Mai as one of our teammates, and we talk about her in that very personal sort of way. Now, we make it obvious that she's AI, right? We're not presenting to parents that she's anything but that. But we are building it very specifically for parents and children and families, and it's interesting to talk to her too.
So what's on the horizon for you and your team?
So we're now that we've launched, now we're going to spend a great deal of time, as Y Combinator says, do things that don't scale. So we're going to spend a lot of time really trying to understand in depth what real users think about the product. It's interesting, before you do this, you reach out to people, you find homeschooling parents, but when you persuade somebody initially to talk to you, they're already different than a real customer. So obviously we did pilots and we talked to homeschool parents, we talked to other experts in the education field, but it's not the same as when you present yourself first, at a convention or, having people download your application, whatever. Until you really get face to face with real customers, you don't know how it's going to be received. So it was a lot of fun. We don't really do trade shows any longer. They've kind of died, which is great. That's how it should be. But in the homeschooling world, these conventions are actually very popular, and it's like a traditional trade show. You set up a booth and signs and TV monitors and devices for demos and so on, and we had the opportunity to just accost a lot of homeschool parents in the hallways and talk to them about their experiences homeschooling and the problems that they have, and it was nice to see that our ideas resonated.
Amazing. And as I mentioned earlier, this isn't your first rodeo, and as you told your story, that you're a multi time founder.
Yeah, repeat entrepreneur. I have a trouble with serial entrepreneur. I don't know why it sounds a little, I don't know what the
three-time entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What lessons do you feel like you've learned from your past ventures that you are now bringing into what you're doing today?
Wow. How much time do we have? That's, the
One thing that you can
the
share.
one thing. I actually very, very clear. Something that I call founder fit, or I don't know if I call it that or if I've heard that term somewhere else. But when you are getting started, finding the right partners is the first most important thing. So having great co-founders doesn't guarantee you success, but picking your co-founders badly can almost certainly guarantee failure. And I've been through that in some of my other startups where we've had real issues with co-founders, and it can really poison the waters, and you don't realize that. You don't find out about that till many, many years later, and then it's too late. So I spent a lot of time, way too much time. In fact, I think most people would say, wow, like you really spent that much time searching for your co-founders. But I did, and I have two amazing, wonderful, passionate co-founders with me. The best choice that I made was to spend too much time really searching for co-founders and getting it right before starting to build product and talk to customers and all of that. Like really get your co-founding team done right, and then you have a platform, a foundation to build on.
And shout out to Maury Maytop.
Yeah.
Early plug. Amazing. So for anyone listening, is there anything, a message or takeaway or some way that like people who would be listening to this can help support you in what you're doing?
What I would say is this, is if anybody's listening has family or friends who are homeschooling or who are experts in the education field, I'm always willing to talk to people. In fact, I really seek that out. I don't have a background in education per se. I've built IT infrastructure products. This is passion for me. I've learned a lot, but we really could use people who care about seeing the education system being rebuilt in a better way. Anybody who's passionate about that, I want to hear from, and feel free to send on my contact information.
Amazing. Definitely will do. Awesome. So, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we've had the privilege of getting to work with you and your amazing team. I'm curious, what led you to wanting to work together? What was that thought process, I guess early on, like as you were, starting out
Okay.
and started to think about fundraising?
So I think we've talked about this before, so I'll say something a little bit provocative. Well, two things. One, first, I know you personally, and I know just what a great person you are and how much hustle you have and what you've built. You've been really successful early on and very quickly. So that's already a great leading indicator that this works, that other people value the services that LionRun provides. But what I'll add is that initially I was a little bit skeptical. I've told you this before, that this feels like, building your deck. This feels like your job, my job, right, as the founder and CEO. And so outsourcing that sort of like initially feels wrong. And it goes against kind of the common wisdom from 30 years of entrepreneurship or whatever, right? But then I realized that in my previous startups, I always had somebody on my team who was doing that work. So I sat with that person and I did the work with them, and they translated my vision into a presentation. I am terrible at graphics and making PowerPoint presentations, and I use too many words, and I'm not good at being succinct, and so I've always had somebody there to help me. And in the case of what we've done with Mai, I didn't have that somebody. We're working really hard on building the product. And when I thought about it, I thought, Nina's been successful. LionRun has been really successful in a short time. Let's take a chance. And I persuaded my co-founders that it was worth taking a chance. And I think it was an amazing decision, honestly.
Wow, it's really amazing to hear. And I even remember having that conversation early on. You're like, when I first started, I was like, or when we first spoke, you're like, I didn't know that this is the thing that people like do for founders. Like, is that actually a thing?
I don't know if you really have competition. I think you've pioneered something new. But what's been amazing is just how well you and your team translated our vision, not just into a presentation, but into words in a format that other people, outside of us, potential customers, potential investors, would understand. And it was more than just putting a deck together. You provided like strategic value. Like it's more than just the wording. There were things that we got out of the process that I don't think we would have gotten otherwise. And so it went well beyond like producing a one-pager or a deck or whatever. It was more than that, and really valuable.
Was there anything like specific from the process you felt like almost like it was an aha moment, or where you were able to extract like the most value? It's always interesting for us to understand like what part is like which part of the process is really like where almost like that breakthrough moment for our clients or for the founders we work with.
I don't know that I can point at some single aha moment. It's more the combination. And if I said something, it would sound too small. in the end, you guys came up with a cool tagline. You're a companion for family-led learning. Finally, smart learning has a name, right? And we actually added just before this show, that was really great, but then we added, finally, smart learning has a name and a face. But you gave us, and it's because, Mai, she's an avatar. And so if I just point out, I said, oh, you created a cool tagline, it would minimize the overall impact that you had. So there was no single moment. It was the whole process together of helping us sharpen our messaging. I mean, no, obviously we didn't change our business strategy or something like that. Like there's a role that LionRun was playing, but it's more than just coming up with a cool tagline or better visuals or something like that. There was throughout the deck, through all the main slides that you normally think of in a deck, you helped sharpen our focus. Yeah, all I would say is I don't know, now it sounds like just a commercial plug. So I don't know that I'm like able to give like just general sage advice about running a startup. There's other forums for doing that, but I would say if you're considering working with LionRun, go for it. It's really well worth it.